The Speed of Trust by Stephen M R Covey. Before writing out the chapter names of this, I listened to maybe the first 30 minutes of the audiobook and it was total fire. I mean, the Covey family, they just get it. You know, the things they write about totally just animate the goodness of the building blocks that make life life, right? I mean, I don't know what it was about Stephen R Covey, but I think he just set out to make the world a better place. Oh, and by the way, the dude had 9 kids, but this is the second of them who I've reviewed a work by. Everyone knows Covey for his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from 1989, which is indisputably among the most iconic and impactful self-help books of all time. If everyone in the world read this book, the world would be a better place. So what's this one about? The Speed of Trust. Stephen M R Covey, is this just like Stephen Covey Jr. or something? I suppose it is. The unabridged audio version is over 12 hours long, so I take it bro has a bone to pick with trust. He has some trust issues. He's trying to settle some intrustices with someone who kicked him in the trusticles while he was in line to get some trustard for his trust dog. I don't know. So what's the big deal about this trust? What is the speed of trust? Why is the speed so important? And what does it have to do with the grand scheme of things? Let's talk about it. Just a little overview, by the way, of what you'll see in the description. There are affiliate links, and if you buy anything through those links, like maybe this book, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. You can also find this book and many others on my Amazon storefront, and chances are if I mention a book in this video, I've also reviewed it, so I'll drop a link to my review of each book as well that I mentioned. So affiliate links, Amazon storefront, and other book reviews. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal, because people shouldn't have to look this information up. It should just be mainstream knowledge. If you agree, then please make sure to smash that like button. Just to notice here, this book on Audible had an unusual structure, and I can be kind of unusual myself when it comes to these, as I find it easier to structure a review based on how the book is structured itself. So when I say it's unusual, it's unusual. I mean, there are literally no chapter numbers. The chapters are not numbered. By the way, it's pretty rare that this is an indication of a book not being good. So if I say a chapter or part is number 1 or 2 or whatever, which I probably won't at the risk of misinforming anyone, let's just say that that might not be the exact number. I always like saying that in case someone checks out the book and, you know, that one person in 1,000, they're like, Sam, this is not what chapter 7 was about.
Sorry, Timmy, there's your disclaimer.
Okay? Nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. That's what this begins with. There's not much running from the notion that trust has generally gone down across the board. People don't trust politicians or the news. People also don't really trust each other in many heavily developed countries. The author fires a lot of statistics on these, and we also fail to fulfill promises that we make to ourselves. So it's like we don't really trust ourselves either. One of the fastest ways to restore trust is to make and stick to commitments. People like being trusted though, but when trust is low, speed goes down and cost goes up. And when trust is high, speed goes up and cost goes down. Next is you can do something about this. This chapter talked about what trust is capable of and how it's representative in the 5 waves of trust, which kind of encapsulate most of the rest of the book. Now, these are like trust in different areas of life, and they include yourself, your relationships, and your stakeholders, he called them. The first wave is self-trust, the 4 cores of credibility. Here's a good question to ask that many people don't. Do you trust yourself? Commitments you make to yourself to set and achieve a meaningful goal. Do you trust that you can make that happen? I took the self-trust assessment in this and got a 78 out of 100. It was very, very interesting to take. Each core of the first wave, though, is vital to increasing trust in every level from the inside out. Core 1 is integrity. A person of integrity is like a tree with roots. That's kind of what it sounded like the way he talked about it. Here's an example of integrity on my part, trying to make myself look good here. It took me 2 years to get this channel monetized, and while I was doing that, I learned that how much a channel makes on AdSense revenues depends on a wide range of factors, but one of those factors is how family and general audience friendly your content is. So I was like, well, it's time to stop cursing, and if I can help it, you know, don't review books that talk about drugs or violence or anything really inappropriate. Now, when I upload a video, they give me this choice to rate how advertiser friendly the video is. And they have a bunch of options for this based on like what things that might be not so appropriate that can be found, you know, described or displayed throughout your video. And I try to stick with honestly answering no to every single one. But if I review a book with certain themes or controversial topics, maybe it curses a lot in the chapters, or maybe it's political, I do have to disclose that in those options. Otherwise they'll notice and it could affect Well, honestly, I don't even know what it can affect, but I'd rather not find out. It's an integrity thing, I guess. If I lied and got away with it, would I make more money on the video? I'd rather not find out if I were to lie about it, regardless of whether or not I benefit from it. I probably wouldn't. Core 2 is intent. You ever notice how like during keynotes and events with massive companies like Facebook or Apple, the CEOs or CFOs or COOs or CIOs and EIEIOs all over the place, whatever, they'll start lots of sentences with something like, in order to provide more convenience for our customers, or they'll finish these sentences with, so that you can spend more time on the things that matter most. They care about how it benefits us. That's what they're focusing on here. And one of the reasons for this is that they want us to know why it's important, what changes they're making. Sure, they care about money and operations and stockholders and whatnot, but no company makes that without benefiting customers in one way or another. A customer doesn't understand a change and they're complaining to their friends about it or something like that. It might not be as easy to appreciate or open him or her or themselves up to. Funny enough, when that's not the case and it doesn't benefit the customer usually chalks it up to involvement with a group of people who are so unclear about their intent that I can't imagine how our country would be if they explained it to the public why they do what they do. And those people are, of course, the government. One of my biggest qualms with our government is their collective disinterest in explaining to the public why they make any given decision, or don't at least open the decision to some kind of conversation other than why are they doing this. Banning TikTok is a good example. Core 3 is capabilities. This moves from the cores of credibility that focus on character to the ones that focus on competence. This is talent, skill, knowledge, capacity, and ability that allows us to perform. And one leadership practice is not being an entitled jerk, especially when you're better at what you do than people below you on the totem pole. Your technical capabilities can actually be taxed dramatically and sometimes even becoming irrelevant in direct relation to your trust building capabilities. And the author said that this is the key leadership competency of the new global economy. He uses the words new global economy so many times throughout this book as well. Core 4 is results. A big part of results in business is a track record. How long have you been in business? How many people have you served? Through results, you can actually fix trust faster than you think. People take numbers seriously, especially when they're written down. McDonald's stores, at least in my area, I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania, they have a big sign that says 99 billion served. Unsuccessful and untrustworthy companies don't serve, I don't know if it's burgers or people or what. They don't serve 99 billion of anything. Let's be honest. And then the second wave is relationship trust, the 13 behaviors. This section is about the 13 behaviors that are most common across high trust people. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Sam, 13 behaviors, like we're talking about 5 waves of trust. We just talked about 4 cores of like self-trust and now we're talking about 13 behaviors of trust. Like, are you really gonna go through all these behaviors? And the answer is yes, we are. Behavior 1 is talk straight. The way I took this reminds me of when people say, tell it like it is. Why like? Can't it just be? Tell it because it is. Don't beat around the bush. Don't tell it like it is. Instead of putting makeup on a pig, as the author said it, tell people it's a pig. Pigs are beautiful animals anyway. Look at that thing. Behavior 2 is demonstrate respect. He uses the words today's global economy and the new world economy very often in the book. When you consider things like, I don't know, cancel culture, it makes sense why trust can be so important within that. People tend to get canceled for breaking trust. Interestingly enough, this specific behavior, people get canceled for doing the total opposite. Behavior 3, create transparency. The internet is a good example of transparency versus illusion, and you can be totally transparent or you could make a giant shield of lies. Social media itself tells you what you seek to hear, not what you want to hear. Just tell people what's going on. A lot of this sounds like common sense, but I feel like the idea of common sense doesn't exist anymore. It's just logical thinking now, and it's very heavily ingrained in the work of the Coveys. That's what they do best. It just is. Behavior 4 is right wrongs. I had an issue happen maybe once a year ago at work, and I brought it up to a manager and how I was really concerned, what if they write us a bad review? Why would this happen? Isn't this lady like gonna lose her patience? What do we do if she does? This dude deals with so much disrespectful behavior from people. He is a saint, and I never gave him enough credit for his unusual level of patience. You know what he told me? He said, things are always going to go wrong. But what really matters in the end is how you're taken care of when it happens. He spoke to the customer every time she had an issue until the entire thing was solved, and the customer ended up being very happy with us in the end. Behavior 5 is show loyalty. I don't know if this is a measure of knowing it's such a great book, but all of these behaviors, I can think of at least one good example of each in my own life. It's just very real world stuff. Behavior 6 is deliver results. This author came up with a ton, and my favorite thing about this is variety, is the use of variety. He uses personal examples from his childhood and of his kids to large corporations, everything from Johnson & Johnson to American Airlines. This dude is obsessed with airlines. He mentions more airlines than anything else. I don't know why. He didn't work at one himself. Berkshire Hathaway, Toyota, General Electric, and much more. Behavior 7 is get better. Here's an example of an example. People know Nokia for their phones. Not many people know that they've been around for over 140 years and they are focused. But the whole time, this focus has been on renewal. Before they made phones, believe it or not, Nokia, they made paper and then rubber boots and then raincoat and then hunting rifles. And then they started making consumer electronics. Isn't that crazy? But they're focused on renewal, and every time they renew their brand, they renew it, I suppose, with a different variety of product. Behavior 8 is confront reality. This is the type of book that really gets you thinking how it's built over a long period of time, and I imagine much of it hinges upon reverse engineering and also brainstorming, like what could someone do to build your trust? If you really think about it, like, could someone do this? If someone did this, would I trust them more? I found myself thinking about this a lot, listening to especially to the different behaviors, and I found that interesting to just kind of consider. Behavior 9 is clarify expectations. Also, this whole thing about trust going up and cost going down and speed going up as a result, he put more emphasis on this in basically every chapter than just about anything else. And this also makes sense. It further highlights the idea of the book and the capabilities of trust, especially in business. Trust in business specifically is what I think this book highlights quite empirically. But behavior 10 is practice accountability. He said one reason it's difficult to take accountability is that we live in an increasingly victimized society. And to practice accountability is essentially a 180-degree turn from this. Behavior 11 is listen first. The gist of this one was to not get caught up in the illusion that you know everything or have all the right answers. Just make sure you're listening and make the effort to meet others' concerns and needs. Behavior 12 is keep commitments. They say to commit carefully and to do what you say you're going to do. I think by carefully, it's like one person can only keep track of so many things. After some time, it all does boil down to consistency though, like many of these. But the next one caught me off guard a bit, in a good way. Behavior 13, lastly, is extend trust. When you trust people, people tend to trust you in return. And when you're so focused on keeping commitments and making sure that you're being consistent and transparent and everything like that, I think this is easy to overlook or just forget. It's not the type of behavior I was really expecting though. The third wave is organizational trust. A great example of this is symbols, such as newly appointed CEOs who don't accept a pay raise because it might send a wrong message to workers. Howard Schultz, the on and off Starbucks CEO and founder, responding caringly to 2 Starbucks employees being murdered. Or the JetBlue chairman driving to an airport and checking passengers in on his personal computer during a blackout in New York. Just lore that's told for generations across a company. Something else is keeping politics and bureaucracy low and everything else that office politics can affect. The fourth wave is market trust. This was the principle of reputation, and much of it revolves around your brand, which is essentially trust with your customer, trust with the marketplace, and even trust monetized, the author called it. I mean, as a result, companies will spend astronomical amounts of money making sure that they get their branding right and that the customer can reasonably expect companies to continue operating the way they do. I think I was kind of drunk when I wrote that last part. The fifth wave, societal trust. Here you can learn about global citizenship and doing good as a company. Companies can push it to the limit by building trust in the community. Where I work right now, the founder donated a nearby hospital wing. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're not just working with anyone, you know? People take stuff like that seriously too, because it's a sign of like goodness. And honestly, as a result, high frequency. A successful market system further teaches people to recognize and trust that sort of goodness. Beyond here, you have extending smart trust. Okay, there are zones in this part. Coveys are really big on graphs and diagrams and stuff, and I wish there would have been a PDF on this book because I listened to it maybe 3 times and just couldn't understand it when he mentioned all these different zones. Restoring trust when it has been lost. Doing this really just sounds like acting on the 13 behaviors. The examples he gave of his son with the driving incident and the minister and his wrongdoings, they were a total chef's kiss. And then the last chapter is the propensity to trust. I've never heard of a book that focused so thoroughly on the impact of trust in a business environment and organization. Some points were a bit repetitious, like that one story I just mentioned about his son with the driving that I just mentioned. I swear that I heard that at least 3 different times in the second half of the book. Granted, it was the abridged version. Quotes, "Mistrust doubles the cost of doing business. While there is risk in trusting people, there is far greater risk in not trusting people. The only thing worse than a leader who doesn't care about his people is a leader who pretends to care. A person who's nice to you and rude to their waiter is not a nice person. Don't let there be a gap between how you feel and what you do." I've found that by trusting people until they prove themselves unworthy of that trust, a lot more happens. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone, especially a career-minded person who has maybe not trust issues, but actually, yeah, trust issues. A career-minded person who has trust issues. Or anyone who wants to know more about how trust works, how it's built and rebuilt and harnessed in a business environment. Direction 2. If you like this book, of course, I recommend checking out The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen M R Covey and The 4 Disciplines of Execution by Sean Covey. The Speed of Trust by Stephen M R Covey. There's a link in the description if you want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos. I bet some of you guys were like, oh yeah, Sam is done with the long reviews. He's just lazy. He's just doing short reviews now. No, if I have more to say about a book, believe me, I will. But I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. If you have subscribed and you want to turn up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.